All right. Hopefully this is working now. Let's see who all is joining us in here. Let's see. Get this going for some reason. There we go. All right. There we go. Wait for people to show up. Hey, welcome to the stream. For anybody who maybe was joining me earlier, apologies. Right when I started, my whole computer just shut down. So, did some troubleshooting, and here we are back. So this is my second, well, if you want to include the failed one from earlier today, this is my third live stream. Let me know if there is any issues with audio. Hopefully everything's in sync, and I've done the tests I've needed to. Yeah, welcome Lucky Luke Productions. Thanks for joining me today. I just wanted to open this up. I did this before, had a lot of fun answering any sort of questions people had, as well as sharing it, stories from my filmmaking endeavors. And today I just figured we would talk about filmmaking for a little bit, my process of kind of how I've done things, answer any questions. We can dive deep, as deep as we can, and go from there. So, yeah, with that, that's what we hopefully will be able to talk about today. And I'm gonna try something really cool right now. Wasn't that fun? I've learned a few live streaming tricks from the YouTuber Nimmin. You should check him out. He's got some fun, interesting stuff on his channel. I'll post a link in the description later on. But in any case, let me know if you have any questions going forward. That's thanks, Lucky Luke. That was my little intro I throw at the beginning of each one of my videos. I was playing with OBS as the streaming or the switching platform I'm using. This probably isn't the same quality of my typical videos because I'm using my webcam, shooting at a little bit lower resolution. The dynamic range isn't quite there. That's the same. And it probably flickers a little bit. Oh, that's why. There's a fan going because I feel like part of the reason I was shut down earlier was because of heat. And hopefully this fixes the flickering a little bit. So there's a good thing. Dynamic range. Dynamic range in video is usually how many stops or the latitude you have in your image. An example would be being able to see a lot of detail in your highlights, like if you're outside and it's a bright sunny day and you can see all of the clouds and the details of the clouds, but you can also see deep into the shadows, like details in the shadows. With a wide dynamic range or a high dynamic range, you'll be able to see details and shadows of your image as well as details in the highlights of your image. With a low dynamic range or a small dynamic range, you're going to have blowouts in your highlights, or crushed blacks are the terms. And basically, a quick overview of what that is on a scale of 0 to 100, black is leveled at 0 and white is leveled at 100. And oftentimes that span, let's see if I can get a deal, that span will be smaller, and then on high dynamic range images that expands more, or the level of white actually will go above 100, and you'll be able to read into that detail. So if you're looking on whatever editing system you may be using, or there's a term called a waveform monitor, and you'll see these little like curves that go up and down on the waveform monitor, and when it hits the 100, it just cuts it off, like just chops off the top, and that's when your image gets so white that it just turns it into, or so bright it turns it into white. So digitally it turn it into ones and zeros, and there's no information in there. So wide dynamic range expands that so you get more detail before you hit that clipping point. Hopefully I didn't say too much information but gave you enough. But that's what dynamic range is. But going forward, a little bit more stuff that I was going to share while we're here. I was looking back, and if you have it downloaded this ebook that I put together, then cool. If not, you can do so. It's on my website, tv.jaredisham.com/store, and I think there might be a link to it in the description. But it's basically, I have no cost to you. It's all free because I just wanted to share the information for you. But I figured, hey, I was reading through it and there might be some fun stuff to discuss or talk about. But it's called The 5 Phases of Making Movies, is what I titled it. And part of it is because when I'm making a movie, or however it is, I'm always focusing on 5 specific stages, or phases as I call them. Because sometimes they'll blend and go. You'll be on one phase and be starting another before you complete a phase. But in any case, I figured I could kind of go through that if you are interested in kind of reading some more details on that and having it as a quick reference for you going forward in your filmmaking. You can download it. But the 5 phases, there's the 5 phases that I look at when I'm making a movie, whether it's a short film, a commercial, a feature film. I look at these 5 phases, and it's 1 is development, 2 is pre-production, 3 is production, and 4 is post-production, and 5 is distribution. So those are my 5 phases that I will apply when I'm making a movie, and usually start with my phase 1 is development, but at the same time, and sometimes even before that, I focus in on not just the development side, but I jump all the way to the end and spend some time in my distribution phase. And that's really just to come up with some ideas, or to give an idea of what my expectations are for the project that I'm doing. So that's kind of that's the start of my movie making process. Let's see, what other things do I do? Pre-production is your basic. I'm going through scheduling and figuring out the cost that will be associated with my movie, any sort of casting that might be involved, logistics and crew, locations, all this stuff before I start production. That's pre-production. Production is the actual shooting of the project, and then post-production is editing and getting everything ready. See, I have in this, I'm going to bring it up. Um, one thing is I've got a few little tips scattered throughout this ebook, and I was rereading them, and I went, oh yeah, I need to keep that in mind. I have, not sure how many, is it like eight steps in post-production? Like I broke post-production down into steps. So it's 8 steps of post-production. Uh, and step one is my file management. In the book, I go deep into how I organize files on my computer, how I am working out how I'm going to keep track of all of the data and have it backed up. Uh, and then also how I organize my editing. Let's see. What do you think is more valuable for becoming a director, making movies or getting on sets like a PA? Well, I've done both. Uh, my first job starting out was in post production. So I was working for a post production facility that was owned by Kodak in Hollywood, and they were doing a lot of TV shows and films, and they were, I think they won some Oscars for their 24p development. So it was back when film was still the standard as far as television, and it was slowly phasing out. And then after I moved on from there, I started freelance, but I also told myself if I want to get paid to make movies, I should probably make a movie. And so I uh, hunkered down and tried everything I could to figure out how to make a movie. And then I made my first feature film. And as soon as that was done, I started working as a filmmaker and was directing all sorts of movies. That is false. Actually, when I finished my first movie and got it all completed, well, got it in the can, then I started having to pay the bills, and so I started working as a production assistant. I was a production assistant in reality television for quite a bit, and uh, it was not my favorite thing to do. But hey, it paid the bills. It got me on set working with cameras, talent, logistics, scheduling, because you still had to schedule and figure things out, and there was still lighting involved. It maybe wasn't quite as artistic as movies, but I worked as a PA, and then I sold the movie, and I continued to work as a PA because a lot of times, and this is a big learn, is you don't make a lot of money from independent movies, or at least the way I did it, you don't make a lot of money. And so there's strategic ways to get to that level of making money. And so working the two side by side, I was able to see how the productions on like an actual TV network scale went, and then how I was applying a lot of what I learned doing a day job and how I could do that for my own projects. There's a lot of little things that I learned that I now apply in my own filmmaking and producing and scheduling and such. And I learned those as a PA, and also I learned like how the process worked. I even went as far as doing background work, and my reason for doing background work and being a human prop for these shows and movies was I really wanted to see how the big dogs did it, and I was having a hard time getting work on these big productions, so I just was the low level human prop or extra, and I observed as much as I could to see how they efficiently move large groups of people or how they didn't efficiently do it, and I would try and glean as much as I could from my low level jobs to help apply to making movies. But the making movies part of your question, uh, you you really should make something, whether it's a short film or a longer form. I recommend starting with as many shorts as you can until you really have something that clicks or you've figured out your style. Because, but those shorts that you do, don't spend a ton of money on them. If you can do them for free just as practicing, unless you've already done all of your practicing, then you can jump into a bigger project. But also, that's where the distribution side of my 5 phases comes in, is if you can figure out your expectations before you actually produce your project, you'll have an actual goal to be setting instead of trying to make it up as you go. But yeah, if you're able to do both at the same time, that's great. There's also other stories like, but a good story that I always share is there's this one filmmaker who shared a story, and or he started out in his filmmaking career, and he did a uh, last one. Oh, the stream. Quick comment about your deal about the stream earlier. My computer completely just shut down in the middle, so I was troubleshooting so that it wouldn't. I think it was the heat. It was pretty hot in Los Angeles here, so if you hear any wind, it's because all the fans are on and the air conditioning. But yeah, this story that I was uh, well, if you got to go, come back and watch this, and I'll have some more info for you, and I'll answer your other question so that when you come back to watch the replay, uh, you'll have something. Check back and skip to 16 minutes in, and you'll be right about there. Uh, it, Oh, you are you just saying you go to college for business? Any case, let me finish this story, and then I'll jump back to your questions. But this filmmaker, he started off with this small movie. He had very few actors. It's actually 2 actors, and the entire crew is 8 people, and they traveled all through Central America, made it, submitted it to a film festival with unfinished visual effects, and it got into film festival of South by Southwest. It got into South by Southwest. The movie was called Monsters, and then as soon as that one released and won South by Southwest, he got hired by a producer from Sherlock Holmes to direct Godzilla, and then after Godzilla, he got hired to direct Star Wars Rogue One. And that seems like the awesome scenario, but looking back, he spent at least 15 years learning his craft ahead of time. So learning your craft is super, super important, even if you appear to be as lucky as Gareth Edwards and get to direct Star Wars for your 3rd feature. Let me look at this. You're a senior in high school and started your own production company making music video, commercials, and short films. That is awesome. Congrats on taking charge of that early. I wanted to start a production company in high school, but I didn't get enough guts to do it until I was in college. And it takes a lot of work. What do you recommend for me to go to film school like USC, UCLA, NYU, or go to college for business? I would almost, if I went back to school, I would definitely look at business as a degree. The thing with USC, UCLA, NYU, all of the film schools, and they're not bad. You learn a lot there, but you have to understand what it is you will learn from from going to film school, and it comes down to if you are going to those film school, there's a good chance you're going to learn more theory than anything. And if what you're going to film school for is for theory and developing an artistic style, then that's great. Highly recommend at least looking into it. One thing to note though is they're really expensive, and sometimes you can develop your theory by watching a ton of movies, looking at or seeing what people have to say on commentary on even YouTube. One awesome YouTube channel if you're trying to develop theory is check out Nerd Writer, and he breaks down movies and all sorts of things. But his approach is a very unique style on like approaching things with a theoretical or artistic point of view. But that's one thing that I noticed in film schools, and even getting into industry. A lot of the graduates from these film schools, we all know, uh, we all know film theory, and we know how to approach a scene and intentions behind stuff. But if you're also trying to start a production company, it may be wise to go to school for business and learn the business aspect of things, and then take your love for the art and all of the research you've put into that and apply that to your business, and going forward in that way. Because there's a lot of business stuff that's taken me years to learn, that people that were at the same school as I was, that were maybe 3 years behind, are far beyond in the business world than I am, because they understood how to approach that, and were in the same field, both production companies. But one's a business focused person, maybe had some film, uh, maybe had a film degree, maybe went back for a business major or a business masters or something. Business is very, very good with doing startups, and you can apply your own artistic vision to anything. Um, but those are my 2 cents. If you're going to school, if to film school, expect to learn more theory than practical stuff of how to sell a movie. uh, because there's a lot of, like, a lot of people I've talked with don't even learn uh, how to go about keeping your movie ambitions sustainable. They know how to make a movie and tell a story, but they don't know how to market that story so that you can actually get some income and make another one. So my 2 cents on film school and all of that. There's a lot of resources out there online that you can learn, and you probably will spend probably 90% less than if you went to one of those big time film schools. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Many filmmakers believe that filmmaking is an art. I believe it is a business. Film school don't really teach budgeting films. Yes. Uh Filmmaking is an art, but it is also a business. I'm trying to remember. Oh, um, Indie Film Hustle. Alex Ferrari. He check out his channel and website, indiefilmhustle.com, I believe. He also has a YouTube channel. I listen to his podcast regularly, but he says it's film business, and which word has more letters? Business does. It's double the amount of letters. So yes, filmmaking can be an art, and it is an art form, but don't forget that if you want to be able to continue making art, you have to figure out how to keep that art sustainable. And keeping your art sustainable is one way, is knowing how to operate a business. So yeah, budgeting, a lot of that, I learned a little bit of that in film school, and prep my own budget spreadsheets that I always reference and whatnot. But knowing what the cost is to make something will allow you to understand how much you're able to actually spend, because you also have to weigh that against return on investments and all of that. So but yeah, don't discount that filmmaking is an art, but also don't forget that it is a business, the film business, and so you have to know how to run that. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Um, Welcome everybody who's joining. I thought I had a little thing pop up here that shares if people are subscribing when for live. I learned that one from Nick Nimmin. He's a fun guy to watch. Um, but in any case, welcome everyone who's joining. Would love to find out where everybody is from. I'm based in Los Angeles area, uh, and this is my Road to Perdition poster. I enjoy that one. Um, yeah, let's see. Um, we were one thing we were talking about. Oh, yes, you are in Norway. What time is it out in Norway? You're like 12 or something hours ahead, if I'm correct. So, indeed, I'd also love to know what people the few people that are watching. What is your what's your like passion? What do you guys like to do most? Are you producers, directors? 11:25, so not quite 12 hours. Um, it producing, directing, editing, cinematography. Uh, I started with the passion for directing, still directing, and then I got into producing because in film school, nobody, I couldn't get anybody to produce for me, so I'm like, all right, I'll just do it myself. Um, so that is how I got into producing. Cinematography was I enjoy just shooting stuff, but I oftentimes, if I'm producing a project that I bring somebody in to help shoot it just so that I can uh, spread things out and not diminish how much effort I'm putting towards different areas of the whole filmmaking process. Well, before I jump over to do more whoops, let me make sure I get this right side. Before I do more on the Q&A side, we were going through my 5 phases of making a movie. Quick recap, it's development, pre-production, production, post-production, and distribution. And we were just recently talking about like the difference of like business and film and uh or business to as opposed to art. I was going through my post production stage earlier, and uh if you if you're interested, my I listed out my 5 phases that I go through when making a movie. I put them in an ebook document that you can get for free from my website. So I think this link is in the description box, but that's what I'm kind of referencing. I kind of forgot I had that, and I'm like, there's some interesting stuff, but going to distribution, it's so important to make yourself or make give yourself expectations going into your project, and knowing like, are you just releasing it for YouTube, and are you or are you trying to get it out there theatrically? Is it a TV deal, direct to video? Do you want it on Netflix? Those sorts of things. Having an idea of where you want it to go determines like the course you take for all the other steps. So it's so important to start with your end goal in mind. Um, let's see. I'm probably going to mispronounce your name, but I'm going to try. Uh, Chocolade? Yeah, I'm just going to call you Mr. Or can I call you Norway? Because I'm very, very bad at pronouncing names sometimes. But let's see. You said I kind of love every part of making a movie, but I'm thinking about getting a bit more into directing later on. When can I find someone locally who also, or when I can find someone locally who also enjoys making movies? That is definitely a good place to start. One thing, when you are just starting out, if you're the director, and you're just getting started, you may also want to experiment with a bit of your producing side, because that's how I started was directing, but I knew that nobody was going to give me the opportunity. So I instead decided to make Chocolate Monster. How fun. I love chocolate. And any case, but yeah, I I became a producer. uh I started producing my own stuff just so that I could have the opportunity. It was all about making opportunities for myself and not relying on somebody else to let you play in the game. uh One person you might check out. So it's one of the things where you can glean some stuff but there are some motivational elements and just some real world realities. But Gary Vaynerchuck, I think his YouTube channel is Gary V. He's got some more business side of things about just make your own opportunities. Um, is it hard making money? 100% yes. Making money is hard and it takes a lot of work. It takes a ton of work. Um, I've been pushing really hard for my production company, and getting in clients is a whole new game. Like, I know how to tell stories, but getting things up and running to be able to expand and do more passion projects as opposed to the bread and butter, feed the machine, paying the bills projects, that takes quite a bit of effort. But the biggest thing is I'm not the expert on the best ways to make money, but I have a few ideas. One, you gotta hustle. You also have to prioritize. You can hustle with busy work and get nowhere. So prioritize your hustle and then aim high. One thing uh, believe Robert Rodriguez said it once is you aim high, and partly the reason you aim high and aim higher than what you usually think is the competition is less. The higher you aim, the less the competition there is, because not as many people try and go that far. So, but again, prioritize hustle. I think I was mentioning it in the last live stream I did was to it was the book 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss, and he's focusing a lot towards corporate America or corporate uh, enterprises and working in a big huge corporate world. But there's a lot of gems in there, especially if you start this early, like if you're in high school trying to figure it out. Check it out, and you might even allow yourself more time with just free time, and it can apply to your schoolwork as well. But 4 Hour Work Week, he talks all about efficiency, and there's a difference between being productive or being busy and being efficient. And sometimes we are way more busy than we are efficient. And uh, figuring out what is getting you nowhere and eliminating that helps you in being able to hustle, prioritizing your hustle so that you can actually make money at some point. My money comes from just it, just to give you full disclosure, my money comes from a number of clients through my production company, and then I also do a lot of freelance editing. So I worked up from assistant editor to as a PA to assistant editor to an editor editing different shows for TV, reality content, web-based content. Um, last freelance editing job I did outside of my production company was it was an editor for a show on CWseed.com called Worst Birthday Ever. It's a little raunchy at times, but kind of funny. I don't know if it's available outside of the U.S., um, but check that out. Worst Birthday Ever. I was one of the two editors on it. The other editor is a good friend of mine, and we're filmmaking buddies, and we bounce ideas off each other all the time. Yeah. Uh, Hope that answered a bit, or at least gives you some insight. Um, Trying to see what other things I kind of really enjoyed last time, just being able to answer questions and hopefully keep you guys from making the same mistakes that I've made over my short career. Uh, yeah, there is a couple things that I don't know, maybe you guys might have some insight into this, but that I'm looking to do. I'm sort of finishing up some stuff, but I'm planning on making available a post production Bible, and it's what a lot of companies, pretty much every show in the industry makes a they make a post production Bible of uh, their post workflow and all of the stuff that they use. So I'm working on putting one together to show you, for the editing software I use, the most efficient way to organize small projects to big projects. So let me know if that's of interest, but I plan on putting it together and making it available. Uh, and then a couple other resources. I've got some directing resources that I'm trying to put together as well to help for quick directing fixes, and a lot of other things. So there's a whole list of new videos coming. I'm super excited to get them all out. Got one coming out tomorrow, so check back. One coming out. But you asked, uh, Lucky Luke, can you give a list of mistakes you've made? Well, of course, I'm trying to think of the biggest mistake that I've made, that I feel I've made, and maybe some people don't see it as a mistake, is my first feature film. I paid out of pocket for it to be produced with credit cards. I don't think that's necessary nowadays. Like, there's crowdfunding now, there's different resources and everything. You don't have to spend credit card money or use credit to make a movie. There's so many different ways in which you can make your film and not go broke doing it. So that's my major mistake. All paid off and everything, but it really put the brakes on a lot of things that I could have done. Uh, it, just waiting to pay that off and working real hard so I didn't go into further debt. So crowdfunding, and to another way to fix that is creatively think of a way you can make a movie for cheaper. The tools now are so cheap that if you just save for 6 months in the right way, you could potentially get a camera enough to make a movie, and you don't have to spend $1,000 on a camera to make a movie or more. You can use your phone. There's a movie called Tangerine that's on Netflix, at least in the US. I don't know if it's international yet. Um, that was shot on an iPhone, and it won awards at Sundance and all of that. So, uh, yeah, it's not about the gear you have, it's about the story. And if you spend as much time as you can developing that story, you can avoid going broke making it. You just have to craft the perfect story for your budget. Um, the other things, that mistakes that I've made, was I sat on my butt and I didn't hustle. Uh, and I think I probably could have hustled more. There's a lot of things where I look back and I'm like, oh man, I just sat on that. I really could have pushed further. So hustle and take risks, especially early in your career. Nobody's watching you, so you're allowed to take risks and experiment without really messing anything up with your career down the road. And even with your career, like Shyamalan did, M. Night Shyamalan made movies taking a risk, and people said his career is over, and it's really kickstarted because he reinvented himself. He was willing to try something new. So those are my at least two that I think are ones that stand out uh, the most for me. Yeah, let's see. What other things have we got here? I was going to share something else. See, hopefully this stream is still going good. I also went off Wi-Fi and jumped onto hardline, and that seems to be working better, along with the air. Um, One thing that my videos coming up that I'm focusing a lot on, I guess this is kind of like starting at the beginning, is of this my phases is coming up with ideas. I've been a lot of the videos coming up, at least for the next few, are very much focused on uh, content that or developing content fast and for within a budget and all of that. Um, it's like I kind of miss it. Should I go to film school? Yes or no, or depends. Uh, it does depend. You have to. What are your expectations? There's a lot you can learn at film school, and then there's a lot film school provides, like accountability, but uh, it also is very expensive, and if you've got the discipline, you could potentially learn all you need online with different courses. There's a lot of online film courses now that you can do, and just saving money is a huge element of it. But maybe that discipline is something you need. Uh, so it comes down to the individual. Uh, Chocolate Monster. Do you have any tips for brainstorming film ideas without high budget and many characters? Yes. Hi. And then you talked about coming up with ideas. Yeah. The video I posted last week is about brainstorming ideas. Tomorrow, a little sneak peek for those of you that are watching this. Let me pull it up here. Tomorrow's video helps a lot with that. Yesterday or last week was here it is, pulling it up. Last week was how to create low budget concepts. This tomorrow, check for a video on how to create or how to generate story ideas fast, and it also works for low budget yeah, projects. And the whole goal is I've been for the past number of years have been trying to come up with ideas to make movies that don't cost hundreds of millions of dollars, don't cost millions of dollars, and don't even cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, but things that potentially I could make that look really good and don't cost any additional money except for maybe the required insurance that you might need for a distributor might require, like E&O insurance. If you can't get cast to work to free costs for that, and then just your time. I'm another insight for down the road. I'm really looking to potentially start these ideas of trying to make a series of feature films at $10,000 or less that also have a named actor in there somewhere. And in the future, I'll give you some tips on how to get named actors in your projects. It does come down to story, but there's ways to get them in your movie that makes it feel like they're in more of it than what they actually are. Uh, yeah, so that's a project I'm trying to figure out, and the in making those movies, all of the concepts I've been coming up with have been using these concepts I've been sharing in my videos of location, characters, and what's at stake. And so a lot of times I think of and for me, making movies, one of the hardest things is finding locations. That had the hardest time on my first feature because it was a period movie, and I was like, oh, if I just shoot out in the outdoors, that'll be the easiest. And then I found out that finding open space in Los Angeles for little money is extremely difficult. Everyone charges, or there is no open space because everything's buildings. Um, so that was a hard thing for me. So now one big thing that I do is when I come up with story ideas, it's like, all right, I hate finding locations. Let's find a location that's either super cheap or something that I have available and I don't have to schedule with people. So that's kind of how I've been coming up with stuff. Then I try and trim down my characters so it's as few characters as possible, and then I'll just try and figure out what is it opposition with them. again, I mentioned this in more detail. I'll put a link in the description or a card in the replay or something, uh, linking to these videos. But um, it's really, really all about coming up with an idea uh, with a few locations, few cast, and high stakes, high opposition, and then learning how to say those or tell your story in like one sentence so someone hearing it goes, oh, I got it, and that will allow you to really focus in on what your story is. I would highly recommend check out that ebook on my website. I've got a lot more details on uh, simple breakdowns and like log lines and coming up with stuff. um, totally free. I think the link's in the description for how to get that. But yeah, if you don't have it already. Luckily, Luke, he said, I really want to shoot a feature before I graduate from high school. What do you recommend? I wanted to shoot a feature when I was in college, and a professor said no. And I went, really? And then I went to go shoot the short, and it was a heck of a lot of work. I'm not saying don't shoot a feature before you graduate high school, but maybe what you do in planning for your feature is figure out what is your end goal of the movie. Like, do you want it as a festival piece? Do you want it just to say that you've shot a feature? Then, in that case, if it's just to say that you've shot a feature and that you have practice doing it, then I guess you really could just go out and shoot something. If you want it to do more than that, that's where you really want to dive into your development of story. So I almost, or after my first movie, I started reading reviews and seeing people say like where my flaws were, and a lot of it was focused in on story. And so instead of getting bummed and like telling people it's like, yeah, well, you don't know what you're talking about, I looked at it and went, all right, well, why did they not like the story? And I'd rewatch it and then read the script, and then I go, I think I know why. And then I went decided, well, if I don't know why don't I go take some more classes? So I spent like how many years? It was after my first movie. It's been out for almost 10 years, 9 years, and my second one's been out for 3 years or so. And second one I didn't write, but I've spent so much time trying to learn story so that I could come up with story ideas that were cheaply done, and I could understand how to keep my characters engaged. So that's where I've been focusing a lot of my efforts recently, has been on nailing those stories and getting those figured out. But again, comes down to what are your expectations. Start on your phase 5. Start on the distribution end of it. Where do you want it to go? And then work backwards from there. It's like, where do you want it to go? And then develop the story for that, and then start going forward in that direction. So that would be my recommendation. Well, we are kind of getting to the hour, and I do have other tasks that I need to do today. So, such as uh, putting together some bids for some jobs and stuff, which is yay. Um, I think I'm losing light, and the kiddo is learning potty training, so I need to go assist with that. Any case, so glad you could all join me today. Hopefully this was helpful, and uh, I hope to see you on the channel in comments and all that soon. Thanks so much, and I will see you in the next video. All right, bye. Wait, here we go. Now I'm going to say bye. I made this intro. I have to share it. So there you go.